And welcome back to Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank. And joining me on the line tonight is my good friend, Julien DeMarco of the May He Rain vlog. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. It's been some time.
It has. I'm trying to recover from my headaches here and health issues, and I'm glad to have you back, Julien. And so, Julien called me up and said,
Glad to be back.
well, yeah, Julien says, hey, Frank, you want to do a show? I said, yeah, what do you want to talk about? He says, I want to talk about Lizzo twerking in a G-string. And I'm like, wait, what?
No! Oh, heavens, no! Oh, man, no!
What should I say?
Oh,
What do you want to talk about?
oh, gosh, no! Well, I mean, every other pundit and conservative commentator is talking about it, so I guess we might as well jump on the bandwagon.
Sure. Yeah, I get it. Listen, I saw that video by the Black Pigeon. It left a stain in my mind, and I think my brain melted a little bit. I don't mean to be mean, but
I really wanted somebody, whenever I got done watching this, I really wanted somebody to say, Julien, tell me where the video touched you.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, it's just like.
Listen, Julien, I'll be honest with you. I'll be honest. I know nothing about Lizzo. I don't follow his pop culture stuff. Is she a singer? Is that what she is? Or an actor? What is she?
Yeah, well, you brought up back Black Pigeon, and he even said in his video that he's checked out and hasn't listened to pop music for, I think he said 10 years. And so you're not missing out on anything. Lizzo is a air quote singer, if you can call it that. She's classically trained. She's a classically trained flutist. So she does have talent. And I've seen videos of her, before she blew up, playing like classical flute music. So she does have talent in that area, but obviously she's obviously she's not actually making good music. She's making the music that she is making, which is quite honestly just repetitive, dumb, narcissistic, nihilistic, and self-absorbed and vain and narcissistic. Did I already say narcissistic? Did I say that twice?
I think you did.
Well, I mean.
And so she had the honor of playing one of the founding fathers' flute, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, this 200-year-old flute, crystal flute. She's in a G-string, in sequins, basically naked. All of her rolls are hanging out, and she plays the flute and twerks.
Okay.
This is what our culture has come to.
Yeah.
And then you have all of the usual suspects saying like what Lizzo did is amazing and brave, and this white slave owner founder, a black woman twerking, playing the flute is the greatest thing, and I'm just like, oh God.
Well, it's hard for me to comment on. I don't know much about her. I just saw the video, like again I said, from the Black Pigeon, and it just kind of hit me like a dump truck, to be honest with you. What I have seen of Lizzo, I think she's a beautiful young lady in the sense that she has a natural beauty to her face, but of course she's a very, big girl who uses that, I guess, in a way where, we got this, she rejects that whole fat shaming thing that's in our culture, and
the thing is though, why is it this fat shaming? Like it seems like we're embracing all things that are unhealthy for us, and that includes being morbidly obese. Morbid is in the name.
Yeah, I know. So that's her gig, and maybe that's what's worked for her to get to fame. I don't know. But I don't think it's a great sign for future generations or young people or a role model in any kind of way. I mean, for myself, somebody who's always struggled with weight. I have a disability that complicates, my ability to actually properly exercise, things like that. Listen, I don't make excuses for myself, to be morbidly obese is an act of gluttony, obviously, right? Because you have to be able to control what you eat and present yourself in a healthy manner. I just don't think, again, the whole glorifying the big body thing is something that, well, it's nothing that should be glorified, I guess you could say, Julian.
Yeah, it's. I was looking through social media and somebody had posted gluttony, the forgotten sin.
Yeah.
And they had like a post about it, and I didn't watch the video. I kind of skimmed the post, but that is true. In this country, we are so. Now, again, there are lots of reasons why people can be overweight, poor exercise quality, genetic factors. But if you know that you are pre-genetically disposed to becoming overweight, morbidly obese, then you should do everything in your power to make sure that that doesn't happen. Not continue with it, not put it up for the world to see, and say like I'm just as beautiful as the woman that has a nice hip to waist ratio.
Sure. Yeah.
No, like why is it that we are constantly trying in society when it comes to what is beautiful, when it comes to either architecture or people, we're constantly like we're trying to subvert the standards. No, there's standards for a reason.
I agree with you. And so I don't know. I guess this is what works for your, 10 minutes of fame. It's obviously working for her. There you have it there, Julian. But there's another story that I saw today. It came out, and it's coming from Australia, actually. And I want your reaction to this. But apparently, the old saying that we've been hearing from a lot of the globalist elites that we will own nothing and be happy, and eventually we'll all be eating bugs at some point. Where apparently,
I will never live in a pod, and I will never eat bugs.
Well, okay, but see, this is the thing. Apparently, in Australia, something like 1,000 schools already have a bug menu for their students and their kids in public schools in Australia. They're starting to pull out the bugs, Julian. I mean, I saw the fake meat in my grocery store here sometime last year. I haven't seen it again, actually. That fake meat, whatever that is, whatever it's made out of, if it's vegan or vegetables.
So if it's fake meat, it's probably made out of some type of vegetable or soy, soy men should not be eating in high quantities anyway, because it's full of estrogen. Yes. And and even women should not be eating soy either, because high estrogen in women is not a good thing, but definitely in men should be wanting to eat less estrogen as possible.
Okay. But apparently grasshoppers have plenty of protein, and that's what these kids are getting in Australia.
No. Are these? So I don't understand. Look.
Yeah.
If you're living in some Asian country, particularly China.
Yeah.
I love Chinese culture. I love Chinese food. I particularly love authentic Chinese food, not Americanized Chinese food. Want to make that distinction. Okay. But if you're living in China or other Asian countries or in Africa, I can understand eating bats, bugs, and all these things, because those countries, you really have to serve those countries, the conditions that they are in politically and culturally and environmentally requires you to eat these types of food. But if you're living in Australia, in America, in Europe, in the Western countries, or air quotes, first world countries, there is no reason why anyone should be eating grasshoppers.
No, but okay, there it begins, and so they're feeding their kids grasshoppers in Australia. So from that, I want to move on. I know you were very touched and emotionally compromised when the Queen died a few weeks back. I know you expressed a lot of your sentiments and emotions on social media. I know how much she meant to you. and how much that touched you personally. Julian, you want to explain to our audience what you went through and why your admiration for Queen Elizabeth II who passed away?
Well, I mean, it touched me. Yeah, I mean, I had to leave work. I was crying. I actually just stopped wearing black like a couple days ago. Um, it 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 touched me because she was always there. I mean, unfortunately I've never been to England. I've never gotten to see her, like, at least from far away or in person. I mean, statistically speaking, um, when she passed, more than half of the English population, more than half of people in the United Kingdom, so in Wales, England, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, that make up the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, over almost 100% of the people. So I think it's about 80%, maybe even a little higher, has seen the Queen in person. And they've gotten to talk to her. So,
Wow.
and she was there. She was on the throne for over 70 years. You have to, as other people have explained, you have to be 75 to remember a time when Queen Elizabeth II wasn't the queen. And as you already know, I'm a monarchist, and the British monarchy, whatever you want to say about all of its flaws, its history, or whatever the case may be, you cannot deny, especially when you live in the Anglosphere, that the British monarchy is the gold standard of monarchy. Of when you say the Queen, everybody already knew what you meant. Although at the time before she passed, there were two ruling queens in the world, in Europe. And that is Queen Elizabeth II, and that was also Queen Margaret II. And so when you said the Queen, everybody automatically knew that you were speaking about Queen Elizabeth II. If you wanted to talk about Queen Margaret II, you would actually have to say Queen Margaret II. You could just say the Queen, and everybody, without fail, knew who you were talking about.
Right.
They're like, how many people can you say, or just name on your finger, can you just say that about people?
Sure.
And they automatically know who you're talking about.
Well, what I appreciated about the Queen, even though I'm not an Anglo myself, is the fact that she carried her office with dignity, respect, modesty, piety, and virtue, as best that I can see it. I know many of our Catholic friends will say, well, wait a minute, they're heretical monarchs because they're Protestants, Julian. But you know what? It's that's for God to decide there at the end of the day. I mean, what he thinks about that. I just think, like I've always said, when it comes to Protestant monarchies, I will defend them, because ultimately, if we ever do get back to some sort of integralist society, or even a Christian monarchical society, it'll be much easier transfer to do it via monarchy, where the monarchy itself can take their people there as a whole, rather than the mess we have here in the States with this dysfunctional Protestant nation where everybody gets to pick and choose their own moral codes. I caution other Catholics, just to understand the logistics of governance and how it works. Because if you ever get that ascension to the throne, and there's a true heart of conversion, and the king or the queen and that institution decides to come back to Holy Mother Church, I think it would be a lot more easier transition for that country to become an integralist nation of sorts, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you've ever had the chance of listening to the Queen's Christmas speech, I would always watch the Queen's Christmas speech, and if you notice, as within the last, I would say, 5 years of her life, they got more religious in tone. And people actually talked about that. You know, if that the speech that she writes herself, the Christmas speech that she would write herself, they got more religious, more overt. You know, the reason for the season is Christ, all that type of stuff, you know, and you know, her last Christmas speech, you know, she talked about Christ did not come, you know, as a general. He came as a baby, as this humble baby. And, you know, she was just very humble, you know, and she made a vow, she made a promise. You know, she was married for 70 years to one man, had 4 kids, was on the throne for 70 years. How many popes and presidents have we had in that time period?
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, she made a promise, she made a vow before God and her people, and she kept that promise.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have we, how many times, even Pope Benedict, he's the Pope, and he didn't even keep his promise.
Yeah.
He's like, this is too tough for me. I'm gonna abdicate.
Yeah, and she was a model of stability for her people and her nation. And she did it in a time where, let's be honest here, since the 1960s at the very least, and I go back a little earlier than that, but since the 60s, the world has gone batshit crazy in with this liberalism that has entrenched all this moral depravity throughout the globe, really. And yet this institution, I think maybe it might have been affected by some of the offspring and things like that. But in general, the Queen herself didn't ever seem to be affected by this, again, liberal revolution, the sexual revolution, and really all the chaos of the past 60, 70 years across the globe.
Exactly. And, you know, I just want to put this out there to the Catholics out there who's saying, oh, well, she allowed sodomitic marriage and abortion and all these other things. Well, first off, American Catholics, you don't seem to understand how the British monarchy works or how the government of Britain works. So for you to just say that she just rubber stamped all these things, you really do not seem to understand the political realities of Britain and the way that the monarchy works. And so just because she signed those things into law does not mean that she approves of them or agrees with them. So you have to understand the difference between soft power, hard power, and what you can do and what you can't do. And
Right.
so, you know, so I really do not appreciate the Catholics who are screaming and who were screaming, you know, that, you know, she allowed this and did this. And it's just like, and it was very interesting because the usual suspects who are always the mad trads, who would have thought that the death of Queen Elizabeth II would be such a contentious issue among Catholics, especially trad Catholics? And it got to the point to where Catholics were like unfriending other Catholics. And I just want to point this out that, you know, it got even to the point to where a priest wanted to have a mass for her soul, and my friend goes to this parish where the priest had to put out this message, and I just want to read you this because it's because I don't want people to say, oh, it was just online. No, this was actually happening in real life too, which online is also real life. And so the priest said, It has been brought to my attention that several people have expressed concern about the Mass being offered this evening for the repose of the soul of Queen Elizabeth II. It has even been suggested that this is a grave scandal. For anyone who might be scandalized by this, I want to assure you that nothing further from the truth could be possible. The Catechism itself teaches us that it is praiseworthy and a work of mercy to pray for the dead. Catechism of the Catholic Church 958-1032. Likewise, the Code of Canon Law is unequivocal. A priest is free to apply the Mass for anyone living or dead. Canon 901. As long as the deceased person is baptized, you can have a funeral for a non-Catholic according to Canon 1183.3. The Catholic Church claims jurisdiction over all the baptized, regardless of their errors and even sins. By her baptism, Queen Elizabeth is a member of Christ's mystical body, and in death she has gone into tribunal which we will all have to face. In Christian death, there is no sectarianism. Moreover, in our charity, we have a responsibility of prayer towards such a towering public figure whose service and dedication spanned 70 years. In his letter to the Queen on the occasion of her Diamond Jubilee, Pope Benedict wrote of her during the past 60 years, "You have offered to your subjects and to the whole world an inspiring example of dedication to duty and commitment to maintaining the principles of freedom, justice, and democracy in keeping with a noble vision of the role of a Christian monarch. May she rest in peace." You know, even when a priest wanted to offer Mass, the holy sacrifice of the Mass, you have people acting as if this is somehow some grave scandal, to the point to where he has to put out a public statement like, whoa, slow your roll here.
Yeah. Listen, I know for myself, I pray for non-Catholics all the time. So it's, that I leave that in God's hands. I think there is a wing, and I think I've heard Set of Canvas make the argument that if you know for sure somebody's not a Catholic, you can't pray for them, then in fact that's a sin. I've always left that to God's providence there, and maybe I'm not a theologian and I don't claim to be a theologian. I just think it's the charitable thing to do. And when I pray for everybody really, but especially the non-Catholics, I'm just asking for God's will to be done with that soul. It's that simple. I throw it in the Lord's hands effectively, and I just make it known that I'm offering up an intention here. So I don't know, Julie. I mean, this is deep church stuff. I'm not a theologian. I'll take your word on this.
Yeah, but I mean, and it's sort of like, and how other people have, like how Eduardo Habsburg, he tweeted out when Queen Elizabeth died, Eduardo Habsburg of the Habsburg fame, he said, does anybody else just feel like they lost a grandmother?
Yeah. And I think too, the other issue, Julian, is we don't know anybody's life or what they've gone through and what their state of their soul is. That's for God to decide. For stated purposes here, how do we know that the Queen also didn't have an act of true contrition at the end? I don't know. That's part of the issue when you pray for somebody, is that you're leaving it in God's hands. I wasn't there with her when she passed away. I don't know the circumstances, the nuances of her death, and even her life for that matter. All we can do is speculate. We hear it's a Protestant monarchy, hence, okay, so we react accordingly in the way that we were taught that, okay, we wish everybody was Catholic, obviously. But I don't think it's wrong to pray for non-Catholics. But again, I'm not a theologian, so.
Yeah, and I mean, just to sum it up, to distill why I have such admiration for her. She's always been there. It's just through all the upheavals, I've lived through Bush, Clinton, Bush 2, Obama, Trump, and now Biden. All throughout my life, the Queen was there, and now she's not. And not only was there a sense of stability, I guess, for England, for her, for her kingdom, there's a sense of stability on a global scale is that, you know, the queen's just always there. She's just there. And that I think that's a very calming thing. And when you have something that's always there, and when you devote your time and energy investing in studying these people's lives, and when you're as passionate about this subject as I am, to lose someone, it's even if you don't know them personally, it really is like having a death in the family.
Sure, gotcha. Okay, but of course now everybody says that the new king, King Charles, is the Antichrist because he signed on to the global warming agenda. What's your thoughts on that, Julian?
I really, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that King Charles III is the Antichrist. I mean, I find it very troubling when you have people like certain YouTubers who make a 51-minute video who go on about, you know, Trump being the new Constantine and, you know, getting egg on your face. And then you come out with a video for 51 minutes talking about how King Charles III is the Antichrist. It just doesn't compute. Like, you clearly don't know what you're talking about, so shut up.
Yeah, I think, Julian, if the concern is that we may have a king or even really any political leader that's influencing the politics of the day, okay, fine, I get that. Something like, you know, the whole climate thing has been in some ways a con job. We all understand that, right?
Exactly. And for people who are saying, oh, yeah, you know, the king is, you know, buddying it up with Davros.
Yeah.
Okay, so you are not a king. You aren't, I'm assuming you aren't a king, and I'm assuming you aren't super, super wealthy.
Yeah.
Do you realize when you are part of a certain sect, a certain echelon, you have to deal with lots of people who you might not want to deal with? That doesn't mean you're friends with them.
Yeah.
So sorry that King Charles interacts with Davros. He is a king of a nation. Davros is, you know, influential and powerful.
He has to deal with those people, in other words. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
Deal with these people. He cannot just not deal with them.
Yeah, because what we've seen historically is that countries will be punished by a lot of these big political bodies, and how you stand up to them. Well, those are calculated factors oftentimes, and I understand it. I mean, don't get me wrong. You know, the whole climate change thing that he's talked about, it's troublesome to me. It's troublesome to a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to say that King Charles is, you know, too buddy-buddy with the environmentalist, well, clearly you don't know anything about King Charles, or his father, Prince Philip, who are very into the environment, hunting and animals and all these other things. So they walk the walk and they speak the talk and all of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, now all the newfangled, you know, things with the environment, that's something entirely different.
Yeah.
And so if you want to badmouth the king about his stance when it comes to like wanting to care about the environment, which is a good thing. He's not the extreme where you need to eat bugs and you need to, you know, live in a pod. He's not that. That's the other people like Davros and all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm. And he's not out there twerking in a G-string. So let's give him credit there.
Twerking in a G-string either. I mean, so if you want to like have, you know, you why don't you worry about these so-called conservatives that, again, what are they conserving? I really I know I say this almost all the time. It's just like, what are they going to, like, where are we going as a country with the conservatives? Because it doesn't seem like any time they get into power, it doesn't seem like the culture at all changes or becomes, air quotes, conservative.
No, it
Like
doesn't.
nothing changes. They just get into power, and the country still becomes more liberal, still more divided, still more nihilistic. It does not become traditional, conservative, or any sort. So what are they conserving? It just seems like they're just a bunch of angry men who
Yeah.
want to talk about things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listen, Ronald Reagan signed the first no-fault divorce law into law in California. We forgave him for that. Donald Trump waved an LGBT flag. I don't see too many conservatives complaining about that. George W. Bush has stabbed us in the back altogether in every which way. My point is, no leader is perfect. I'm not making an excuse for the position the king has taken. I hope he reconsiders the position. Considering there's some nuances there, right, and some problems with it that's tied to this globalist agenda. But I don't think we also throw people under the bus immediately. That's our tendency, though, right? But we tend to look the other way. So there you go, Julian. Listen, buddy. Well, it's been a great conversation tonight. Great to get back on the air here with you, and I'm glad to have you back. And we've kind of just touched on a bunch of topics tonight. I think the Lizzo thing is still ingrained in my mind, unfortunately. And I'm gonna have to write the Black Pigeon an email here. He's got to warn people with that imagery, man. I had no idea that was coming. Okay, so
Yeah.
your final thoughts, my friend.
Twerking should be outlawed, especially when especially girls of Lizzo size.
Okay, well, yeah, well, I understand. So, yeah. All right. Tonight was an interesting show, without a doubt. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I thank my friend Julien DeMarco of the May He Rain vlog joining me tonight. This is Frank signing off, frankly speaking. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.